I live in a rural town in South Carolina called Batesburg-Leesville, home of the Poultry Festival and the famous Sheely's Barbecue. It's a nice place to live. I think my only complaint is being far away from my friends and family. Back in 2020, when I still lived at home with my parents, we watched a documentary about why the Danish are the happiest people in the world. Ever since then, I haven't been able to stop chasing Hygge. Hygge really isn't a directly translatable word. It really tends to get lumped into words like cozy, but the Danes swear up and down this is a total misconception. The word is defined as invoking a sense of well-being, comfortability, just in general being away from anything that could be annoying you. You can use the word as an adjective, a noun, a verb, really however you please. The Danes use it many different ways. For example, they could say something like, "This coffee shop is so hyggelig," or "We need to bring some hygge into this room." The rest of the world associates hygge with dim lighting, warm beverages, blankets, and these are all parts of it for sure, but there's a lot more behind this elusive Danish curtain. Hygge has been a word to quickly diffuse across the world. People from many different countries have become intrigued by the warmth that the word promises. It really took flight in 2016 when social media saw a huge increase in tags and mentions related to hygge. More than 10 books on hygge were published just that year. Hygge was even the runner-up for the Oxford Dictionary's Word of the Year in 2016. So why was everyone else around the world so obsessed with hygge too? Well, I set out to understand it. Being cozy and happy sounds great, but how can I recreate it when I don't live in Scandinavia? The Danes are known to be the happiest people in the world. Considering that they live in a country where the tax rate is 50% and they have the perfect climate for seasonal depression, this really should surprise you. But there's a lot of factors at play, so let's unpack Denmark's situation. Over the past few months, I have read books, articles, watched documentaries, YouTube videos, all about how Danish people live in such a different political landscape than us here in South Carolina. My favorite book that I read was The Year of Living Danishly by Helen Russell. She lived in London before moving to a rural city in Denmark for her husband's new position at the Lego headquarters. I loved this book because Russell has a great journalistic voice with a lot of humor, but she also gave me great insight as to what it's really like to move to Denmark. She touches a lot on the entirely different pace that the Danish live at, and she doesn't look at her new home through rose-colored glasses. She looks for the truth, and she spends most of the book interviewing people, asking them how happy they are on a scale of 1 to 10 and why. The Danish government is known to be one of the least corrupt governments in the world. The Danish have very high levels of trust in their government and trust in their society. They pay high taxes and they don't complain about it because they know that their government is using it for the benefit of society, like providing free healthcare for them. Education is also free, so the Danish can choose any subject that interests them and they can face no cost barriers to entry. The general consensus on income in Denmark is that it doesn't really matter how much you make because most of it is going to be taxed anyways. So people just do what interests them and they know that there's a social system that they can fall back on in the event of an emergency. Next up on what the Danes do right: childcare. Helen Russell finds out about halfway through her book that she's pregnant with her first child. Danish parents are generously granted 52 weeks of paid maternity or paternity leave combined, with transferable hours if needed. Childcare is insanely affordable, which contributes to the fact that 86% of mothers return to work after having a baby. The government pays for 75% of the costs of childcare. If you make under $72,000 US per year, there's a deduction beyond that 75%. If you make under $22,000 US per year, it's actually completely free. Plus, if you end up having more than one kid, there's a discount for siblings who are both using childcare. For kids under 3 years old, childcare is $560 per month on average in Denmark, versus closer to $1,000 in the United States. Ages 3 to 6 is cheaper, around $318 for the Danish, which is explained mostly by not having to use as many diapers. Since the parents' basic needs are already met, there's more time for them to do enriching things that are actually fun and meaningful in their lives. When the members of your community all have their basic needs met, a general level of trust is established because you're not worried about a stranger stealing from you. If you took psychology in school, you're probably familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This pyramid shape shows the needs that humans have, from the base of physiological needs like air, water, food, or shelter, all the way to reaching your full potential in life. There are safety needs like health, well-being, financial security, being safe from crime, and having a stable environment. Love and belonging refers to having social connection and acceptance in your life, like having a community or affection from loved ones. Esteem refers to self-respect, confidence, your reputation, your achievements. Self-actualization refers to the creativity, personal growth, having purpose in your life, having meaning to drive you. Each stage must be appropriately met before you can proceed to the next. I bring this up because the Danes live in a society where their basic needs are already met from the time that they're born. This allows them to focus on higher levels of need, like esteem and self-actualization, creating an overall happier population. The level of trust in Denmark is so high that when mothers go inside stores or cafes, they will tend to leave their babies outside in the carriers so that their babies can get some fresh air. In stark contrast, back in 1997, one Danish woman in New York City was arrested on the grounds of child endangerment for leaving her baby outside of a restaurant. In her defense, in Denmark, this is a normal, socially acceptable thing to do. She had no idea that the United States would villainize her behavior. The Danes also have a great work-life balance. Helen Russell touches on how her husband gets off of work around 2 to 3 p.m., giving enough time for his colleagues to go pick up their school-aged children. Office morale is high, and the relationships in the office are emphasized, where it's very common for them to eat meals or attend events together. The Danes work around 34 hours per week on average. In the US, workers average 8.4 hours per day, which ends up coming to roughly 42 hours per week. With the Danes having 8 more hours of free time than the United States, it gives them time to participate in hobbies or just things that feel meaningful to them as individuals. The Danes are excellent at finding ways to be cozy indoors, probably because they're stuck inside for so many of those dark winter months. They use 13 pounds of candle wax per person per year, which is the highest rate in the world. The Danes have fantastic architecture, and they take pride in their design and quality, as well as the lighting in their homes. Lighting is heavily stressed in the realm of Hygge, and it can be scientifically backed. Warm light by fireplaces or candles promotes relaxation, whereas a cold tone white lighting has been found by the International Journal of Neuroscience to increase stress levels in humans. Let's dive into some of the research that I conducted myself. I anonymously interviewed around 50 South Carolinians. Before receiving any responses, I was expecting that most Southerners wouldn't know what the word Hygge meant, nor would they have heard of the term before. But I wasn't expecting the results to be this polarizing. 83.6% of the people who responded had never heard of the term Hygge before. Considering the amount of books and documentaries that were published about the term so recently, I'm surprised that more people hadn't heard of it briefly. When asked to describe the word if they were familiar, responders used words like chill, peace, harmony, balance, things like that. I asked, without explaining how it's related to Hygge, how often people did Hygge things in their social and home lives. For example, 50% of the people that I surveyed said that they very rarely light candles, which I defined as being less than one time per week. The majority of respondents did say that they tend to use low light options in place of their overhead lights, which is good because it shows that they're already conscious about how lighting can affect their mood. When asked about bonding at home, whether it's playing games or cooking homemade meals, most people said that they do it a couple times a week. But 15% of the people that I surveyed said that they very rarely ever have bonding time. This is becoming a lot more common in my generation. Going out with friends or family proved to be a little bit more common, with 41% of people saying that they do it 2 to 3 times per week. But another 46% said that they do it once or less per week. By no means do I think that America is totally void of community, but I do think that everyone would agree that our definition of community has shrunk over the past few years. Once, your town was your community, and people looked out for each other. People said hello in the grocery store. People just don't initiate those sorts of relationships most of the time anymore. According to Russell, between the year 2000 and 2015, the rate of antidepressant use went up by 400%. Clearly, the rest of the world is searching for happiness too.
Cases of depression have been surging over the past few years, and certain states have been hit harder than others.
Both America and Denmark are ranked as some of the most individualistic countries in the world. The difference, however, is that the Danish still value community despite their financial ability to be independent. The social infrastructures are obviously vastly different between the two countries. The United States has a healthcare system that's a blend between public and private, but employer-based insurance is by far the most common. The U.S. system is great for research advancement, but the out-of-pocket cost for healthcare often leads to medical debt. Denmark's healthcare system is considered universal, so it's tax-funded. Every resident is covered with no premiums. This means that there could be longer wait times for non-urgent medical concerns, but citizens experience little to no medical debt. Education was another obvious difference between the two countries. In the United States, K-12 schools are funded by local property taxes, which leads to wide disparities across districts. And famously, higher education often leads to student loan debt. Denmark has a nationally funded system where each school is more standardized. University is free for all EU citizens, and the government provides a grant to students to help them pay for housing while they're in school. The United States puts such an emphasis on the individual freedom and high mobility within the economic system. But Denmark has built and focused their country on collective social trust, security, and equality. Clearly, the individual is the one who bears all the risk when living in the United States. If you want to be entrepreneurial, you must consider what happens if you can't pay for your health care. The social system in Denmark absorbs that risk, which allows for people to be more experimental in their lives and, in turn, happier people. Now, neither country is perfect, but it can feel suffocating when you think that there is little that you can do to influence the system in the United States. Denmark is famously uncorrupt. The United States is becoming famously more corrupt, with politicians being influenced by the dollar. Besides protesting, speaking up for your beliefs, trying to pass new laws, which all do have the potential to make a difference, I wanted to propose a different way for us to translate the Danish practice of Hygge over to the South Carolinian culture. If you're feeling like I did, just overall dissatisfied with this American individualistic life that we're all living, take it upon yourself to create for you and your family your own Danish community. I call it the Sunday supper tradition. Sunday supper can take so many different forms. It's just about having you and at least one other person forming a memory, forming a community for that evening, that Sunday evening. If you could do it more than once a week, then do it. But bare minimum, connect with your people at least once a week. I feel that we need to all ask ourselves, how can we bring community-mindedness to South Carolina? Who is your community? And how can you cultivate your relationships with them? Although it's impossible for me to instantaneously imitate the social and political system in Denmark and paste it here in the United States, luckily I do have the power to recreate a Hygge night in for my friends and family. So my goal is to have a Hygge party to spread the spirit to my friends and family and show them what it's really like to live in a Danish community.